It's school time for first-time students and their parents. Today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we have Tammy Schatzko from Bemidji, Minnesota.
Yes.
And WeLoveMesses.com is the name of your company.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about back to school. Actually, really not back to school, because we're going to talk about first-time students.
Yes,
First
we are.
time they're getting ready to go to school. And I bet there's a lot going on in the minds of the parents and a lot going on in the minds of the students. So let's talk about that first. If you were sitting down with a parent and saying, okay, here are a couple things you need to think about and getting ready to go to school, what would those be?
Well, I find that the moms are a lot more emotional about it than the dads, because it's a bigger part of their life for most of them, not everyone.
But some of those moms though can't wait. Yeah. Right? You know,
Yeah,
they
I was probably one of those.
Okay, right. So
No, just kidding. Yeah, there's a lot to think about when you're sending your child that you've had home for 5 or 6 years. All of a sudden you're sending them off on this school bus and their day is not clicked into yours anymore. So there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of anxiety producing there possibly. And what I really encourage parents to do is not transfer that to their child. You can be anxious all you want as the mom, seeing your little baby go off to school, but try not to let that, try to be excited for your child.
you're not supposed to cry at the bus stop?
Well,
Okay.
no, I can't
keep
say
a
I
straight,
didn't
keep
do
a
it.
straight
I did
face,
it,
then you
but
go home and start crying,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Wait till your back is turned and then do whatever you need to do. Poor little kids.
Well, what do you think are some of the challenges that students have when they're going to school? It's a new environment for them.
Well, I think that at this time of year, usually August, September, you can open up just about any women's or family magazine and see an article about what to do, you know, routines, pack the lunches at night, that kind of thing, anything you can do to make the morning easier. But to take it beyond that, there's a saying called everything in its place and a place for everything. And that actually came from Ben Franklin back in the 1700s. And if you remember your history, he discovered electricity.
He had like about a zillion inventions, right? The
He
eyeglasses,
did. Yep.
everything. I mean,
But if you really think about it, they didn't have electricity then, so it was a dark and stormy night. If he didn't have a place for everything and everything in its place, do you think he would have found the twine and the kite to go out in the night and fly it?
Probably not.
So we should take Ben Franklin's advice. If our children know A, where to find something, then B, they know where to put it away. And that's essential, because when you come home from work, if you're a working mom and dad and you've got all this stuff going on, you know that backpack is in one place, and your student knows where it is.
So do you suggest having like a command center or some place?
Yeah,
Like
for everybody. I mean, if you can't find your keys and your coffee cup in the morning, try doing the same thing, a place for everything and everything in its place, and then you and your kid are kind of on the same team. You're modeling great behaviors for them, they're picking it up, and all through their entire life, that will be key. They will know where their things are because there's a place for them.
Now, okay, we always think about a backpack as the typical carrying device that a kid has. What are some essentials that maybe need to go in there that will help them stay organized, you know, other than just their regular books?
Labeling of some kind so that they know who it belongs to.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I like to have emergency contact information. Most moms and dads, if they're working, have a business card. They're great to slip in the little pocket. If it's an older book bag, you know, there's little pockets for business cards. My kids had that when my husband had an office. They dropped the business card that way. There was always emergency contact information there. And then your essential school supplies. And I like to have the kids empty those backpacks at least once a week, because you would be amazed at the things. Smelly socks, rotten lunches, you know, those types of things. It's important for the kids to clean them out at least once a week.
That's like the Friday routine. Okay,
Yes,
dump it
kind
out
of.
and sort it through.
Yep.
Okay, so everything in its place. What are some other ideas?
Okay, this one I like to call do the ask. So basically, I interviewed some teachers, and they feel that the most important piece of a successful school year is communication. Now, the communication needs to go from the student to the teacher to the parent in a circle, not a triangle with broken legs, but, you know, a continual circuit. Circle.
Yeah.
A circuit circle.
Yeah.
You know? But the piece of that is the parents, we are the mature ones. We are the ones that need to ask our students and engage our students in the evening, preferably. So if you're doing the ask, it's avoiding mornings. Mornings are very, very rushed. We don't want to be asking about papers that need to be returned, anything like that in the morning. It's too crazy. So try to find some time in the evening. It only needs to be 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
So avoid the morning. Stay engaged for us. This is a really important time for us to be able to tell our student by focusing on them, not texting, not answering email, not making dinner, 3 minutes to invest in your child to say, how was your day? Do you have papers that need to be returned? Do you have any questions? Just a conversation, and you'd be amazed at what can come up in 3 or 4 minutes. And plus, if you're finding the papers and returning them, your teacher's going to be so happy. And the K is keeping track. A lot of elementary students, especially new ones, have like standing tests, like standing Friday spelling tests, those kind of things. If you know that, keeping track of them and asking the ask on Wednesday, do you know your spelling words? Do you know you have a math test? Those kind of things, they keep you engaged with your student, and they let your student know that it's important to you that they succeed.
Now, we as adults like to use planners and schedules and calendars, but you think of a first grader or a kindergartner, not exactly walking around with a daytimer, although a lot of them probably have the electronic devices now. But how do you help someone get organized, a first grader or someone new in school, with kind of like what their assignments are, and something's got a due date, or we've got a field trip on this date? How do you, as the parent, get that all calendarized, as a friend of mine would say?
I'm very tactile, so I like paper. I have electronics, but I personally like my paper. I like to encourage people to have that command center that you were talking about, and either having like a monthly calendar. In my house, I have older children, but we have a weekly calendar, and everybody's got a slot, and they're all responsible for filling out practice 6 to 8 Monday. We all have to put our calendar in there so that we all know where we are. With a younger kid, if you had a monthly calendar and they brought home their paper for a field trip, you could encourage them to take their pen and mark it on the calendar. If it's an only child, you could just do an X. It doesn't have to be a big ordeal, but somehow reinforcing that putting it on a calendar is cementing it. You're not going to forget, because you can see that day coming up as you go through the weeks. And it gets them into the habit of marking things down, and they're going to need that skill the rest of their life.
Now, my kids are a little older now, but how are the schools communicating these days? Are teachers, it used to be send a note in the backpack, but are they using, internet websites or email?
I think so.
How are the schools communicating these days?
I've noticed, again, I don't have really young kids, but I have seen the backpacks coming home when I'm working with parents, and I still think they're communicating a lot via paper, but I'm noticing more and more teachers getting emails and sending emails out, which can be equally challenging for parents because we don't always have time to check those things.
We have barely time to check our own email.
Yeah, exactly. So it's another important thing. That would be a communication piece with your teacher. Find out if she's not letting you know that that's how she's communicating, you're not going to be looking for it. If you ask her and she says, yes, I communicate via email, that gives you an avenue in the middle of the night when you can't sleep because poor Johnny got an F on his math test and you just don't know what to do. You can send her an email. A nice one, but you can send her an email.
Right.
But you'll also know to look for them if that's how she communicates or he communicates with you.
What are some of the basic, essential tools that a new student should have in their backpack? We got the holder. Like, what are some of the other things that what you would call the basic supplies?
The basics. I like to not overwhelm them because I think there's too many choices. So the basic box of 8 crayons.
Yes.
I always
Not
want
the
the.
64.
I know I want the 92, and I love the smell of fresh crayons and sharp points. But just the basics. It's so easy to go buy, like you said, 62. The kid doesn't know the difference between red, orange, and orange, red, and red and orange. So just give them the basics. Let them get a smooth start, smooth foundation. Notebooks are good. Maybe they can keep little journals in there and relay that to mom and dad if they think to write something down. They have a test on Friday, whatever. Pencils, just the very basics. They will bring home so much stuff that you will need to deal with.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk more tips for new students going off to school. I also want to find out a little bit about your organizing practice and how you got involved. So we're with Tammy Schatzko from WeLoveMesses.com, and we'll be right back.
Now you see it? Now you don't. Now you see it again. Smead erasable fast tab hanging folders have a special erasable surface that makes it easy to reuse and revise the labels on your hanging file folders, saving you time and money. All you need is a permanent marker, standard white eraser, and Smead erasable fast tab hanging folders. Use erasable fast tab hanging folders with a built-in reinforced tab that you can use again and again. No more messing with tabs that fall off. Erasable fast tab hanging folders are stronger than standard hanging folders and come in a variety of colors for even more organizing possibilities. Erasable fast tab hanging folders, an eco-friendly reusable innovation from Smead, keeping you organized.
We are back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about back to school for the first time. So in other words, new students, they kind of don't know what they're getting into, whether it's kindergarten, first grade, young kids, their parents, and the organizing challenges that they have. And we have with us Tammy Schatzko from WeLoveMesses.com. And Tammy, we talked a little bit about some of the supplies and things before the break. What are some other tips or some advice that you have for the parents of these new kids going off to school?
The greatest tip I have, and no one likes this one, I just can't understand why, is to read the handbook.
Oh, the handbook.
Every kid gets a handbook, whether it's digitally delivered or they bring it home in their backpack. The schools spend so much time and energy carefully crafting the answers to the standard operating procedures, absences, lunch money, how to communicate with the teacher, what are you going to do if you're sick, vacations, bus routes. All that information is in one place in a little manual or handbook that comes home from the school. And I found, even for myself, more times than not, if I've kind of even skimmed through it, okay, you don't have to read it like it's that important, but it is. It can save a frantic call to the school if you don't know what to do.
Right. Is that something you recommend the parent reads with the student, and they kind of go, well, Jimmy, by the way, if you have this, or it's just really, is it more for the parent?
At the age we're talking about, the younger kids, the new students, it's way over their head. They don't care about any of that, and it's not their job to care. It's our job as a parent to make sure that they have lunch money, and how does the bus ride, and that kind of thing. How do we take them out of school? How do they know? Can they have their phones? That kind of thing. As they get older, like I think in middle school, they actually have to sign the back of the handbook, and that's more about behaviors and dress codes and things like that. When they get to high school, I believe there was a note about internet usage, and they had to sign off on that and bring it back.
Do the schools enforce that, though? It seems like if you go into the schools, it's...
I think it depends on each school.
Yeah, it does. Well, let's take a little break here and talk about your how you got involved with organizing. What's your backstory on becoming a professional organizer?
My backstory is that organizing has been a passion my entire life. I just had to have someone else wake that up for me and make me realize that I could do it. When did you realize that? Did you realize that at a young age, or? No, I don't want to give away my age, but I'd say it was about 7.
Some people say they're born, organizing their sock drawer, right?
When I was 29, no. I would say about 7 years ago, I think it was, I joined a business with someone who was cleaning and organizing. Okay. And I like to clean a lot, and I still have a branch of my business that are eco-friendly cleaners. But the organizing, really, to me, when I realized that I can take something that comes to me naturally and help other people reclaim spaces that they have just given up on because it's so overwhelming, and it's so clear in my mind how this happens, how I can help them. It's not like I walk in and go, oh my gosh, you have so much stuff, I don't even know where to start. It's like there's this clear path in my head. And when I found out that I could help other people with that path and with that thought process, it was very exciting. And then I joined the National Association of Professional Organizers, and I went to a conference, and there's all these other organizers, there's all these products, and there's all these methods. It was fascinating and exciting. And I've just continued that path. And right now I'm very into chronic disorganization and hoarding. I'm very passionate about those two items. They're not what I specialize in necessarily because I do the whole range, but I think there's a real need in our society for help in those areas.
Now you're located in what would be called northern Minnesota,
very
which
rural.
is, go to the Mall of America and go straight up, right? A couple hours and over.
Over.
Yes.
Way over.
How does that work in a rural setting? I mean, is there enough business there? Do you work a broader area?
I work a much broader area, and it's challenging.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time in the car, and that's okay because you just get to meet so many neat people, and you get to help so many people, and every day is different. I never know what's going to come across my phone.
Do you think it's disorganization is universal in that someone in the city versus someone in the rural, are they all dealing basically with the same issues, or are there different challenges in different areas?
I would say, and again, this is based on not having lived in the metro area, so I'm generalizing here, that metro has a lot more access to things. We have more limited shopping, but let me tell you, Amazon delivers, eBay delivers, and I can tell you when I see those boxes start piling up that we're in trouble. But with the internet, I think it's kind of evened out. If you want to shop, you can do it 24/7, whether you're in the metro or in the rural areas.
Well, let's talk about one of your organizing clients. We won't give their name out because we want to be confidential about that.
Absolutely.
But let's just talk about their challenge and how you help them overcome it, just so we can get here's the situation and here's the solution.
Okay. I think paper gets away from people, and that's another passion that I have, is that paper takes up so little space except when there's a lot of it, and it takes a lot of time to go through papers individually. So a lot of times when I'm working with a client who's overwhelmed by papers, we'll do like a gross sort, I call, or a macro sort, where we look at the title on the paper and it goes in a box. And sometimes if there's a lot, which this particular client I'm thinking of had a lot, we had a lot of boxes labeled different things. And when they realized that some of the boxes just weren't that important, they were able to let the whole entire box go. But they knew what was in the box because we'd sorted out the papers. They didn't need to look at each individual paper because they knew that we'd sorted that by a group. So maybe it's junk mail. Maybe it's, lottery tickets. It's different.
Do you have a sorting system then where you have like different piles or different?
I do, but it's different with every client.
Okay.
It depends on the type of stuff that you have for paper.
Okay.
If you are a teacher and you have old student files versus you're an IRS account, or you're an accountant and you have old IRS returns, that's going to be a totally different entity, and we're going to have to sort those differently and handle those things properly.
Okay. Well, let's bring it back now to the school thing. Sorry, that was a little diversion there, but we always like to find the backstory and the background of the people we have on the show. Let's talk about paper, because this is very appropriate to school.
Yes.
How do you deal with paper at home? Of course, those backpacks come with, in addition to the dirty socks, they also have a bunch of papers.
Yes.
How do you decide what to keep, what to store? How do you store it?
Well, here's the definition of clutter in the organizing industry. It's a delayed decision. And if you think about it, everything we pick up and set down because we cannot make a decision about it becomes clutter. So maybe I'm going to sit this down, and pretty soon I'm going to get more papers out of the backpack, and I'm not going to deal with the whole sheaf of papers because it's just overwhelming, so I stack them. And then tomorrow I stack, and the next day I stack, and then and pretty soon I've got a pile up to here, and there's no way I'm going to sit down on Saturday morning and leaf through those.
Right.
So as much as it takes time up front to do it, I say don't take the stuff out of the backpack until you're ready to deal with it right then. Don't take it out and set it down somewhere else, because you're just creating more piles for yourself. But it's very counterintuitive.
Yes.
Because it does take time. It takes more time up front, but in the long run, you have saved yourself time and energy, lost papers. You just know what's going on.
Wow. Well, listen, we've got to wrap up the program here, but I want to give you the opportunity to tell people how they get a hold of you and maybe some of the services that you offer.
Okay. I do a lot with eco-friendly organizing. They kind of consider me a conduit for finding resources. If people want to get rid of bigger items, I usually can find a home for it other than the landfill.
Okay.
So that's kind of a huge piece of what I do. Chronic disorganization, hoarding, paperwork, attics, garages, kitchens, the gamut.
Okay.
So my business is We Love Messes. Let us organize yours. You can find me on the web at welovemesses.com. I also have a Facebook page, a Twitter account, and a Google+, and I would love to hear from each and every one of you.
Awesome. Tammy, thanks for the time, and we hope to have you back on another show.
I would love to.
Great. Tammy Schatzko from welovemesses.com, and we're going to take care of them for you too. Today on Keeping You Organized.